Do we need a revolution?
Yeah, I really believe we do. I think the phone addiction is, and this is a ridiculous statement, I think it's my generation's HIV/AIDS to solve. I really do. I think it's the greatest challenge our society is facing. I think so much of the political division we're facing, so much of the mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, I think it's largely all downstream of the fact humans have got too addicted to the device.
Welcome to Thinkers on Times Radio, the show where we dive deep into the biggest debates of our time, challenge conventional wisdom, really try and get some nuance. We've got a bit of time, we've got a bit of space, we can try and explore issues that interest us. My name's Stig Abell. Each week I sit down with some of the sharpest minds in the world to unpick the issues shaping our lives. Today we're going into the brain. It's a very important thing, the brain, not entirely understood by everyone, but understood by our guest better than most. Why are we so polarised? How do our brains work? How do our brains work in a world of tech where we're constantly battered by bleats and blurts and constant demands on our attention? Is that shaping our brain, or is our brain shaping our reaction to it? Well, joining me is TJ Power, the neuroscientist, co-founder of Nurify, who's designed The Dose Effect. He's got a book called The Dose Effect, to unpack the hidden forces shaping our views, from dopamine-driven outrage to the way social networks might influence, even hijack our thinking. And can we do something about it? Are we just victims of the world, or can we shape it? TJ Power, great to see you.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited for this chat.
Well, I'm so interested in this because I do think the question of what makes us us is a fundamentally human one.
It is.
And the brain is obviously a massive part of that. How much can we control what our brains do? How much are we in control? Maybe that's a good place to start.
At the core of it, we are in control, but discipline is required to be capable of controlling our brains. And for hundreds of thousands of years, our brains just operated quite naturally. There wasn't certain things trying to hijack them and shift their opinions or beliefs or behaviors. We are now living in an environment that's quite confusing for the modern human brain, whereby technology specifically is really disrupting our capacity to feel as though we're in control of what we're thinking and feeling and doing.
And that wasn't true. So there's always been technology. So when the printing press happened, that was a big change in technology. I suppose even congregation for church and things like that, where your brain was being shaped by external influence. There's always been developments that's meant information has changed how it is pushed to us.
Definitely.
But are we talking about an order of magnitude difference with the world of technology now, social media, phones, that sort of instant speed of it all?
Yeah, it's the speed, it's the frequency is really significant. When we go deep into this whole dopamine brain chemical, you might have had like a bit of a dopaminergic experience in church whilst you downloaded and learned some new information, but that might have happened once a day or a few times a week. Now it's more like a few hundred times a day that we're downloading new information, new opinions, reaffirming our own opinions. And that frequency of engagement with new information is very influential on how we think. Tell
us about dopamine then. Is that a critical chemical in all of this?
It really is. Dopamine, I believe, is controlling our whole world effectively. It's controlling the political landscape, financial landscapes, and even all of our personal addictions to things like these phones. And humans, and I'll continue to refer to hundreds of thousands of years, just because we developed as a species for a very long period of time before we ended up in this hyper-stimulating digital environment. And these brain chemicals evolved for that experience. And so
just to be clear, do you think there's all of human development until 2000, and then there's the post-2000 world, and they're almost, you can draw a line somewhere?
You really can. You can draw a line between a lifestyle that was very physically active, very outdoor-based, very human connection-based, and required a huge amount of effort to engage with it. Now we're living in a world that's very indoor-based, less connected, less effort is required to live life now because we can just deliver our food, sit at home on our computer all day. And there is a massive disparity in how our brain chemicals evolve to function and then how they're operating in this modern world. And specifically with this dopamine one, for all of time, we've been hunting for this chemical. Literally, for a lot of the time, we were physically hunting for it in terms of trying to locate food, also forage for fruit, build shelters, start fires. And it was a chemical humans have always had a deep desire to attain. Now in the modern world, suddenly we can attain it just within our phone, within a click. And that's creating this massive alteration in how that chemical is functioning, and it's really disrupting our brains.
And what is it then? Try and help us understand. Is it pleasure? Is it satisfaction? What is it?
Yeah, so we are looking for those two words. Those are good words. We're looking for pleasure and we're looking for satisfaction. And say as a late 20s man back in the day as a hunter-gatherer, I would have found my pleasure and satisfaction by maybe hunting for food and spending 4 hours outside hunting until I successfully found food. Once acquired, I'd have a really pleasurable and satisfying feeling in my brain. I can now, rather than bothering with 4 hours of effort, which we would refer to as earning your dopamine, and dopamine slowly increasing in the brain, I could wake up in the morning, I could open my phone, head straight to Instagram, TikTok, pornography, all kinds of things that would cause this massive overstimulation of dopamine. And then we're getting addicted to this feeling of I need to constantly be in pleasure, which is also impacting this political belief system that we all have. And it's effectively burning the chemical out. It's only a limited resource. If you use it all up first thing in the morning via your phone, you run out of it. Then you get into this kind of deflated, unfocused, sadder type brain state.
So what gives us a dopamine hit? Is it finding something that's intellectually interesting? Is it something that where we look like we've won at something, so we've sent a message on X, or we've done an Instagram post and loads of people have liked it? Or is it someone has said something that we agree with and our worldview has been somehow reinforced? What gives us the dopamine?
Yeah, it's a mixture between those. A variety of things can give it. At the core of it, novelty is designed to increase dopamine. So for our ancestors, if you were walking along and you suddenly saw like a little bit of blueberries in a bush, that would be novel in your environment, something new. And then suddenly you'd get a little bit of a dopamine increase, and your brain would think, okay, now take action, pursue that goal, and it would drive us towards that behavior. On our phones, obviously, is unlimited novelty. And even when you look at our addiction to these phones, when you look at the advent of TikTok a number of years ago, and suddenly this short form video content, that's what's really transformed the addiction to the phone. Never before could we doom scroll so hard ever since until this frequent viewing of alternating content got created. And effectively it's just novelty. And whether it's affirming your belief system, whether it's just stimulating, whether it's pornographic, whether it's just something that makes you laugh, all of these things are just spike. And our brain evolved for 3 or 4 dopamine increases a day, and now they're getting hundreds, and it's exhausting it.
Is the verb to scroll the most dangerous verb, possibly even in the English language now? That scrolling didn't really exist at all, 10 years ago even in the beginning of the internet, you'd sort of clank onto the internet and you'd look at websites, it'd be annoying and it'd be slow. Then when we first got phones, I suppose it speeded up, but presumably social media companies, are they working with brain intelligence? Do they know that the dopamine is
for sure.
Is there a lab somewhere where they've worked this out?
Effectively, how the brain operates in terms of getting you very addicted to things is you need random reward. For our ancestors, we were effectively addicted to hunting for food because it was like our biggest priority. We had to get food. And it was random, the reward. We wouldn't just every time go at a certain time and then there was definitely food. It would be very random. Some days it'd be there, some days it wouldn't. And that would be very good for making our dopamine constantly seek for that. And if you take rats, for example, and you put them in box, this was a big study done by a chap called Skinner, who really was like the godfather of addiction back in the 1960s. And if you get rats and you give them the opportunity to press a lever, and then if they press the lever, they can receive cocaine, they'll get pretty good at just like pressing the lever occasionally, going, getting a hit of cocaine and walking off. If you make it so that every 3 presses, they get a hit of cocaine, again, they'll learn quickly. Every so often when they feel like they need it, they'll hit it 3 times, they'll get cocaine. If you make it completely random, if it could be on 1, 5, 7, 42, 3, they go completely nuts and they just can't stop tapping it. And the social media feeds are designed in a way whereby not every single video or post that you see actually interests you. It's designed to, maybe it's the next one, maybe it's the one in 5 time, maybe it's the one in 8, 6, 2, and it's very varied. And that keeps our brain on this perpetual hunt for more and more of that stimulating experience we're looking for.
And the person who invented TikTok, the person who pushes TikTok, whatever the next thing will be, because I presume, I'm old, I'm 45, and so I'm too old for TikTok. And there'll be kids who are on TikTok now who'll be too old for the next thing. There'll be another thing, won't there?
For sure. There always is.
And do they sit there and think to themselves, the people creating this, we need to get people addicted. We need dopamine addiction. And the way of doing that is actually making sure things burst out quickly. That the scrolling, they know what's happening here, do you feel?
100%. They do know what's happening. And I'm not here to like judge them. They're running their business and they need to get their ad revenue. And that's how it operates. Like the more eyes they get on those screens and the longer those eyes are on the screens, the more money those companies
Yeah, and we're
make.
part of this now. I'm talking to you on the Times Radio YouTube channel. We want people to sit but actually we want people to sit and listen for half an hour to a long piece rather than saying, here's something and in 10 seconds time there's another thing.
And this is very different for the brain because the people listening to this in this moment right now, their brain is having to require effort and attention in order to sustain in this conversation and continue to gain pleasure from it. And even if you look at the difference between, say, Instagram and TikTok, when you open Instagram, even though Instagram's rapidly trying to change towards being like TikTok, you open it and you might see a picture and then you're going to like kind of decide where you're heading. Are you heading towards Reels or are you heading towards a comment section or DMs? If you open TikTok, it's bang, there's the video. And that's very strategic. That's to try and immediately spike the dopamine. And even with something like YouTube now, we're very frequently picking YouTube shorts over watching long form YouTube because we're looking as species in this modern world for an easy life. And unfortunately, our brain chemistry doesn't want an easy life because it didn't have that for hundreds of thousands of years. And every time you make the easy decision over the more effortful decision, you spike the dopamine and crash it out. And the low dopamine experience is causing so much of this disruption to our mental health that we have today.
So what do you do about this? Because I've got 3 children. The eldest is 16, the youngest is 6. So that's a pretty big range. The 16-year-old has acquired an interest in a phone and TikTok. The 6-year-old hasn't yet, but will be growing up very much in a world where that's very prominent, more prominent than it was for her older sister. Is the game up?
No, the game's not up and we're going to solve it. And I believe humans can thrive in this modern technological environment. I do. Like I've got a lot of people, thousands of people through Dose that are now thriving in this environment as a result of altering the relationship with technology. Step 1 is we can't see technology the moment we wake up in the morning. And that's the habit that basically the whole world is currently unwilling to break. We think we need that phone to wake us up and we have all these reasons to do with, I need it for emergencies in the night that basically never occur, and I need it for my alarm, and I need it for all these reasons. But if you and I were to run an experiment whereby for the next 7 days, I told you every single time when you wake up, within 30 seconds, I want you to drink a glass of red wine. And you're like, okay, I'll do that for 7 days. Think how quickly you'd get very, very addicted to that glass of red wine, and you'd have it at say 6, 7 a.m. By 8 a.m. it would begin to crash and you'd almost want more wine because it'd be the only thing that kept you feeling okay. For our brain chemistry, wine and phones, they're no different. And if we have it immediately upon waking, we are all priming our brains to get unbelievably addicted to it. And with that said, if you develop the capacity to break the addiction first thing in the morning, you then begin to become the person that's in control of the relationship with the device.
So are we talking about something very old-fashioned here, self-discipline?
It is discipline. The modern world requires immense discipline, as did the world 100 years ago. But I think humans were more willing to live in disciplined worlds.
Discipline was more of a virtue. And maybe delayed gratification was more of a recognised pleasure. We don't live in a world where we want to wait for that. I think for my kids that even when I was growing up, you didn't have every food you wanted every day of the year. You had days of the year, like I always laugh at them, on Pancake Day, I had pancakes once a year.
Yeah,
my kids have pancakes 3 times a week.
Yes.
So their relationship to pancakes is very different to my relationship to pancake.
And they would get less of a dopamine increase when when you did because of the novelty.
So is discipline, is it too old-fashioned?
It's what is required. It really is what is required, discipline. And one of the big challenges is when you're very low in the dopamine brain chemical, experiencing the discipline type actions are much harder to achieve. Like say, for example, you get really drunk. The next day when you wake up, you're going to be a lot less disciplined with how you approach your morning and your food and going out for a walk than if you were to go to bed really early. And that's because you're waking up with more of these dopamine molecules in your brain if you've had a healthy evening routine than an unhealthy evening routine. Modern society is very low in dopamine. So the discipline of even making your bed, having showers, making sure you're focused when you're working, reading books, all these things that are required to elevate dopamine, we're losing the will to bother to do them because our discipline is reducing.
I always tell people to do this experiment. So I write novels, but I also read a lot of books. And what I do is, I always say to people, take your phone, turn it upside down, start reading whatever book you're reading.
Yeah.
And just time how long.
That's good.
Before you do this. And actually, it should be half an hour or 45 minutes or an hour, because nothing, unless you work in accident and emergency, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
you can wait half an hour for everything. Many people, it's like 2 minutes.
For sure.
Or 30 seconds. And some people would just say, we'll just put it in a different room entirely. Is that what you're talking about as well? That we just need to start seeing these things like drink or drugs or anything bad for you. We're going to have to do it, but I'm not going to do it every day. I'm not going to do it every part of every day.
Definitely. We need physical separation from these devices. That's right at the core of solving this challenge. Even in this moment, I make sure that my phone is physically not on me and it's on airplane, just so I don't even have a little dopaminergic drawer in my pocket. Even if it's not going to buzz, it's just like my brain is conscious it's there. And if you were to sit on the sofa in the evening and go, okay, I'm going to try and, because people can't even watch TV now without their phone.
It's double screening, isn't it?
It's double screening. And it's like the reason TV is becoming boring to us is because it's not as dopaminergic as fast changing content, because there's not as much novelty taking place on the TV like when you're watching a movie as there is in your feeds. And if you were to sit on the sofa and go, okay, I'm just going to put my phone there and I'm not going to go on it for 20 minutes. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's like trying to quit smoking and putting a cigarette and a lighter right next to you. So you need to develop the capacity to be like more, to be setting better boundaries effectively, whereby phones are getting physically separated from you far more frequently.
Do we need a revolution?
Yeah, I really believe we do. I think the phone addiction is, and this is a ridiculous statement, I think it's my generation's HIV/AIDS to solve. I really do. I think it's the greatest challenge our society is facing. I think so much of the political division we're facing, so much of the mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, I think it's largely all downstream of the fact humans have got too addicted to the device.
And it's clear that mental health, either a lack of resilience to mental health or mental health conditions, or both, have become a sort of modern pandemic. That either we are more mentally ill than we've ever been before, which is possible, or we're certainly less resilient to the normal up and downs of mental unrest that comes with being human, which I think is probable. And it's probably a combination of the two, actually. It
is a combination of the two. And you think, say, for example, you're 8 years old, back in the day, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, and you had to experience some kind of mental discomfort, like you got really told off at school, or your parents told you to do something annoying, you had to take out the bins, you had to deal with something that required some level of resilience. You then had to push through that experience and become resilient. And now in the modern world, anytime we feel uncomfortable, straight to the phone to distract ourselves off that feeling. So it's not just the addiction to the phone, it's the fact the phone is leading to us not actually engaging in the activities that make us a resilient being.
And so we would then, something like sadness or anxiety or panic becomes something that's overwhelming. I'm interested from a brain chemistry point of view. Do you think that there's something in the brain that means we're less resilient? Is there something that, because I think every human being, since they discovered the concept of the future, whenever that was, hundreds of thousands of years ago, has been anxious at parts. Has the brain changed in terms of how we process anxiety, do you think?
I think our resilience is definitely significantly reducing because our living experience as a modern human is much softer than it once was. We used to have to do ridiculous stuff to survive as a species, making fires and hunting. We had to be a very tough species, both men and women, to survive in a natural environment. And now life is much easier. Many parents are almost fearful of even telling their kids off now because there's been like this shift of whereby almost kids are now running the house and deciding, and parents are like, shit, I don't want to be a bad parent or do anything like abusive, which of course you don't want to do those things, but there is an element of we need to experience the emotion of like discipline and that kind of experience as a modern human. The other element is our nervous systems are really dysregulated in the modern world, meaning our hearts are beating much, much quicker than a person 20, 30 years ago. And it means when something is a little bit anxiety inducing, it's way more anxiety inducing.
So explain that. So you think actually an anxious moment 30 years ago is more anxious inducing now?
Much more anxiety inducing. Like our heart rates are literally rising because of this level of overstimulation. And say, for example, our primary mode of relaxation now is scrolling content. That's like the main way in which we chill in the evenings. And whilst you have this almost pseudo relaxation because your dopamine surges, so you feel peace in your brain because when dopamine surges, you don't think about anything. In reality, in your body, your heart rate is increasing and your blood pressure is increasing and your body is getting into a dysregulated state. The kind of environments that truly calm us are natural environments, being out in the sunshine, having our bare feet on grass, getting really good sleep, napping, being completely unstimulated, being bored. And then our heart rate goes like this and it chills back out and we're really overstimulated and we're not doing any of the things that destimulate us. So our body is just in this perpetual anxiety. So then, if something is a little bit anxiety inducing, it's like, oh my God, this is really scary.
Let's talk about politics then. How does politics fit into this? There's one political argument, which is, and I talk to a lot of politicians on the breakfast show I do on Times Radio, is it's a lot harder job for them because this 24-hour constant scrolling approach means they constantly have to be feeding our dopamine addiction. They've got to constantly be telling us new stuff. They've got to constantly be answering questions, answering to us who vote for them. And that means their job has basically gone from being once a week they stand up and tell us what they're doing, and then once every 4 years we judge them, to every 20 seconds someone has a thought about it and they've got to get a video out and they've got to respond
Tweet
to whatever it is. So there's that. But do you think also our brains are shifting in terms of how we regard politics?
I think it is. I think it's a very confusing environment whereby, say when you were younger and you were hearing about politics through your parents or maybe your own interest in politics, you would read like a few sources as to like what was something that you would then shape your belief on. You'd read the newspaper, you'd hear someone on the news talking about a particular idea, and that's cool. And you may be able to hear both ideas, conservative and Labour ideas, and decide and feel into based on your family values or whatever it might be, where you want to sit on that particular scale. In the modern world, it's very dopaminergic to have your belief system affirmed. Okay. It's really nice for our dopamine system, not in a good way, but it's very pleasurable for our dopamine. If I have a really strong belief about something, whatever it is, I really hate Trump, whatever it is that people like currently are thinking,
and then really love Trump,
or really love Trump, whatever it might be, and then you see loads of people saying that they really love Trump, or loads of people saying they really hate Trump. If it's very affirming, you get this like dopamine, like, yes, I'm right, I'm winning, I'm right. And humans really are getting addicted to that feeling, and it's creating this massive political division because you've got some people mass consuming I love Trump, you've got some people mass consuming I hate Trump, and we're getting further and further apart than ever before. And then the big complication is there's no oxytocin, which is this connection chemical that creates empathy and understanding and openness. There's none of that taking place within digital environments in a different way. So if you and I were actually to sit here and have a political discussion based on our beliefs, we'd have to make eye contact and listen to each other. And it'd be very different, me and you having say we had differing opinions, very different us arguing here than if we were arguing on comment sections on a phone.
So oxytocin, is that the thing that's created when you like stroke a dog?
Yeah, when you connect with anything in the world, humans, when a mother gives birth, she has this huge surge, as does the baby, of oxytocin. Then you go through breastfeeding and then you begin to form relationships. And oxytocin is referred to in neuroscience as the great facilitator of life. It's just this chemical that wants us to bond in groups, take care of our families, procreate, have kids,
all that kind of stuff.
The hugging chemical. And it wants humanity to be deeply bonded. And we are getting so low in that chemical because we're now living our lives in digital environments instead of real ones.
We can't produce oxytocin online.
You can't. You can get a small oxytocin release if you specifically call someone that you are very connected to and you hear their voice. That's basically the only way to get oxytocin via digital technology. You're not getting any oxytocin if you're just reading comment sections and liking things and hating on people or loving people, whatever it is. It doesn't stimulate through that environment. It's specifically designed to connect us in real life.
And in that world, and I don't know if there's always been true, so be careful we don't sort of we say everything is rubbish now and it was brilliant before, because one of the roles of connectivity is it means people are seeing more information than they've ever seen before.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I think the sort of postmodern argument is that authority used to be very dangerous, and authority used to be a monopoly, and authority used to be very top-downward, and it used to say, here is our truth, and whether it be the state or the church or whatever, and you have to believe it or we're coming after you. And so you were shackled by a very single-minded view of the world. Now it's a very multiplistic view of the world. And that could be good if in that world there was still some things that weren't arbitrary. Truth mattered, humanity mattered, empathy mattered. Then you can have a multiplicity of viewpoints, but you'd still want to come back to some sort of view of what's the real position, what's honest, what's truthful, what is beneficial, rather than what simply my tribe agrees with. And I don't know if that's possible, because from what you're saying, the nature of how we consume this stuff, we've basically abandoned the concept of truth and authority in favor of, let me just get a hit of something that I probably agree with anyway. We do.
That's exactly what's happening. And although, yeah, it was always, let's say, top-down authority, and now there's more viewpoints that can be heard, there's still definitely a very prevailing narrative as to what should be the main belief that humanity have now. And then if you're not in that belief system, you're kind of unethical or immoral and you're just hated. So there's an interesting interplay where it still is kind of one prevailing way in which we should think. It might be the best way to think, but it's still that you feel within political frameworks quite judged with whatever opinion you may have. And I think the technological infrastructure is making us much more judgmental of one another's opinions. And if I say, went and hung out with my mom or something like that, and we had differing opinions, if me and her were to actually sit down and just say, like, have a nice, calm and honest conversation saying, I understand that your belief system has been built upon what you have consumed, which is fair for you to have that view. Maybe your view's right. I've got a belief system based on what I've been consuming, and let's try and find some kind of way in which we both believe in different things that are actually kind of aligned as to what we want with humanity. But currently, it's no like kind of in-person, open, calm discussion. It's just mass hate on social media, and that's not a very conducive way to actually reach a conclusion.
Someone came on our show a while ago and said something that's really stuck in my mind. I think this is probably what you're talking about, which is that today will be the slowest day of the rest of your life.
Interesting.
Because basically everything speeds up.
It does.
And human beings, I don't think, have ever voluntarily stepped back from a technological development.
No, we love it.
We love it.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about, your solution here, would be a revolution, but it would also be a kind of unprecedented revolution, because how do you get humankind to slow down when fast is possible and to step back from a technology that is getting quicker and more connected? You know, we'll have to talk about AI at some point in all of this as well, which is another huge development on its way. Are we just two old men shaking our fists at clouds? Because actually tomorrow will be faster than today, and the day after that will be faster, and so on and so on and so on, until we all go mad?
I don't believe that's the case. I can see a future where humanity is deeply connected to technology and has the capacity to use our phones and laptops and maybe AR glasses and headsets one day, but just also has the capacity to deeply understand that we spent 300,000 years in nature as a species, and that also needs to come with us on this progressive journey towards basically becoming robots.
So how do we do that? Is that the government to say no phones for 18 until you're 18? Is it maybe a technology itself that stops phones working for X amount of hours a day, or is it just self-reliance?
I think self-reliance is going to achieve the most. I think it would be great, like if there was a thing where from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. in England, everyone's phones like shut down on social media and we were forced to connect.
The digital curfew.
I think those sort of models would be great, but in my research lab and all the work we're trying to do, I can't wait for that moment to suddenly arise, because it's not coming.
And it probably won't happen.
It's not coming. Whereas I deeply believe if humans come to understand what their greatest desires are in life, like what is it that you're chasing right now? Connection, confidence, success, motivation, money, attention, whatever it might be. And then begin to understand how much your addiction to technology is disrupting your capacity to have that experience. Then you begin to develop true internal motivation to change your relationship and to start reprioritizing time in the evening off the phone, not going on it when you wake, not having it at the dinner table. There was this big study that came out yesterday in America, and it was asking 7 to 11-year-olds, what's the number one thing that you would love your parents to do? And the number one thing was use their phones less. That was from 7 to 11-year-olds. And like even kids are just really wanting their parents to have their attention less on these phones. And it's not that I'm against the phones. I literally grew up, got an iPhone at 11, loved my phone my whole life. My whole business and life is built upon my social media accounts. So I'm not against social media or against technology. I love AI, I use ChatGPT. It's just that we need a balance. We need to be able to have boundaries whereby we separate from it.
But how do you do that? I mean, people can read your book and you can talk to them, but how else? But how can you societally change that? Can you societally change that?
Just as like there was a period of time whereby we were beginning to not enjoy people smoking a cigarette right next to us indoors. Yeah. And it was like, please, can you not do that? I think we need to start to understand that the phone is a very similar thing to that. It's really disruptive to human connection and peace within our brains. And even sometimes I sit on the train and I just think like, when my parents used to get the train to London, they said that those carriages were full of people kind of chatting and like, how's your day going? And like checking in on each other, and they knew each other. And now it's every single human just
or even if not
scrolling.
That, even reading a book.
Reading a book. And reading a book is far better because you're earning your dopamine. You're not giving your brain quick dopamine. You're having to put in attentional effort and you're receiving reward after a period of time.
But the smoking thing is instructive because smoking was I think you're right, it was a scientific acceptance that smoking was bad for you.
Yeah.
It was a societal acceptance of the scientific position.
Yeah.
But it was also a state intervention in Britain where we're talking. It was smoking is banned inside public places. Mm-hmm. And I remember when that happened, everyone said, this is the end of freedom. Yeah. People are not going to go to pubs anymore. It's disgusting that the state would stop you doing stuff. And then now, no one of your age or younger could possibly imagine going to a pub where people were smoking.
Yeah, I remember when I was about 8 years old or something, that I used to get the bus to school from this, and it was next to a pub. And I remember them building this outdoor area, and I was like, Dad, what's that? And they were like, oh, you got to smoke out there now. And I was like, oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
So I like just about remember it in my earliest memories.
But that made, and then they made cigarettes really expensive. They put warnings on cigarettes, and all the way through, basically cigarettes went from, if you read any book from the 60s, if you watch any TV show from the 60s and before, everyone is smoking. They are smoking the entire time. They're the punctuation of the day. It's not dissimilar to what you're talking about with your phone.
Yeah.
That if you just watch someone in the 60s, in business meetings, they'd sit down in a business meeting and hand out cigarettes.
Yeah,
and
for
everyone would
sure.
smoke cigarettes for the entirety of the meeting.
Interesting.
And that was changeable, but it was changeable by a whole combination of things. And here's a question for you. Donald Trump, mentioned him a couple of times. He's in the pockets of, or they're in his pockets there. He's collaborating very closely with the tech companies. They're all in that, all together.
Yeah.
The most powerful people in the world want us to be addicted to our phones. And the most powerful people in the world terrify politicians. So in that environment, how could you possibly get change?
I think they want us to be addicted to our phones now, but they haven't yet seen this young generation enter the workforce. And I think there's going to be a massive societal shift when the current... I train kind of between 10 and 18-year-olds in schools.
So my kids' age.
Yeah, and I spend lots of time with them, hours every week, thousands of kids. And there is very significant like attentional challenges that are going on, and capacity to do hard things and be resilient, and really key social skills that are required for these kind of environments or any kind of working based environment. And I think there's going to be a big societal shift when that generation enters the workforce, and economically we discover, the phones are actually affecting us economically because these people can't work as hard, they can't concentrate for as long. And if there's an economic challenge, then the top obviously is more important for them.
But will AI at that point, and then you throw AI into the mix, and the question is, how much will human beings be necessary in various workplaces?
I believe AI is just going to enhance us. I don't think it's taking us out. Yeah, I don't think it's taking us out. I think there will be some jobs where things like AI robots might be quite capable, but I do think that a huge amount of these industries of banking and law and medicine and doctors and all across the range of occupations, I think AI will significantly enhance our capacity to be good at these jobs, but not get rid of us.
So I'm really interested in that, because my eldest is 16, and I'm saying, so I'm thinking about what job she might do.
Yeah.
We're in the centre of London having this conversation. If you look out of our windows in our office, you can see the whole of the city of London. There's probably 30, 40, 50,000 lawyers and accountants and bankers, more than that. There's an argument that 90% of their jobs, particularly the junior jobs, will be done by AI. Because it's just gathering information, processing the information, and developing an outcome.
Yeah.
And that's very algorithmic.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting question. If all the big, interesting jobs are not AI, but the jobs you do to become better at your job get removed, what happens?
I don't think businesses are going to give up on the fact you need young people being built into your systems. I also think there was a world, I don't know, around 100 years ago during the Industrial Revolutions where all the men worked in factories, for example, many women worked in factories. And if someone had said, all these factory jobs are going, then what are we all going to do with our time? And we're all pretty busy now. So I think it's very likely that new jobs are going to arise, new worlds are going to arise with AI. I do think it's going to cause complications, AI. I think the social media feeds are going to get very, very addictive if they're not addictive enough already. More so, because the AI is just going to get better and better at learning you and really giving you
So the problem we see now is going to get worse before it gets better, potentially.
For those that don't have the capacity to find physical separation from technology and have rest and connection and nature and sleep, it's going to get more severe, the pain that we navigate. For those that do have the capacity to start thinking, and now is the time to start thinking, because it's the easiest it's ever going to be right now, because it's only going to get more addictive.
That's my point about getting quicker. This is the slowest day. This is the slowest day of the rest of your life. So do it now.
Tomorrow is the day to not go on your phone when you first wake up and begin this new discipline within your life. Because eventually there's going to be a headset you can put on that's going to transform you into the avatar world where you can have sex with things. It's just going to be mental, the dopamine in the modern world as it evolves. So therefore, we need to start building the physical separation out. And it can be done. I'm very optimistic about the future. I think humans can have the most amazing things that we've developed in the modern world, from amazing access to healthy food. We can still connect with each other. We can still access natural environments, but we just need to manage the addiction to the tech.
So you mentioned delaying your phone in the morning. What other steps are there?
When you're working, you need to make sure the phone is never on the desk. Like, a lot of people are working in computer-based jobs, and effectively what's happening is we do 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes of work, and then we're like, okay, I deserve a reward now. And we're teaching our brain to expect reward every few minutes, and we need much bigger gaps between the gratification.
Is that something you can do,
moment.
like with a run? You run for 10 minutes and you're knackered, but then the next day you run for 12 minutes, and then the next day you run for 20 minutes.
You get better and better at it. A huge part of it is also society beginning to become comfortable again with just being bored and less stimulated.
But how do you do? I'm with you right up to the point where I look around me and I think I don't trust politicians to do this.
Yeah, they're not
doing it with healthy food.
Yeah,
they did it with smoking, but they're not doing it really anymore with healthy food.
And the vapes are back.
And all that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why did we invent vapes? I find that just anyway.
Front and center in the supermarket, nice and colourful, cheap.
The cynic in me says we screw everything up, actually. So how do we do that? How do we value quiet, repose? Because it feels old-fashioned.
It does. You have to understand like why you'd actually do this. Like for me, for example, I have a very addictive personality. That's why I'm so interested in this. Like I grew up cigarettes, alcohol, partying, everything, pornography, all of it was so addictive to me for like 10 plus years. And that's why I felt a desire to build a research lab that attempts to solve addiction. And then I now look at my life and I think, okay, so I would, for example, when I get home this evening, love to like scroll TikTok for 3 hours. I would definitely find that an entertaining experience. But then I have to weigh it against like, how is that genuinely going to affect my experience in my life? Like my peace and my happiness, my connection with my girlfriend, how motivated I'm going to be to attack my goals in my work. And then I start really weighing it up. And then you begin to make decisions that are based upon you feeling your best and you having your best experience of life. And if I get home tonight and I'm like pretty overstimulated and I try and sit on the sofa and watch a movie, I'll sit with my girlfriend and I will be a bit like heightened up. And in that heightened up state, it's easier to just get the phone, just start scrolling Twitter or something like that and looking at some hectic political beliefs. I don't know what I could do. But if I just sort of sit there and I go, okay, I know this is normal that my body's overstimulated and my heart rate is fast. And I've just got to wait 10 minutes. We call it the boredom barrier in our research. 10 minutes for your system to slow. Once it slows and you're like sitting and you're chilling watching a movie or you're having a nice conversation or you're walking in nature, eventually it starts to feel really good. But none of us are getting through that period of destimulation to actually get to the feeling of peace.
And that's true also, I suspect, when it comes to political arguments, that you're saying there's a physical thing we need to do to separate from our phones, but presumably we're also going to be happier about being wrong.
Yeah.
And happier about being uncomfortable or holding two views that might slightly conflict because the world is a complicated place.
Yeah.
The revolution, I suppose you're talking about, goes beyond simply putting your phone out of your room. Well, that's one very clear method of doing it. It's somehow to find a way to be back in a world of complexity and nuance and mild anxiety and being wrong. And if you're wrong, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. That's the other thing that happens with the social media world. If I say something that turns out not to be right, I'm a terrible person.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, good faith, maybe it's a return of good faith. But again, I sound like a hippie when I talk about this.
Some of the hippie ideas we need right now.
Do you think? Do you think we need to sort of touch our inner hippie a little bit here?
We do. We need to touch that, like, that natural part of us. The hippies were very, and maybe they went too far, but very in the pursuit of like all being all natural and light and connected. And we are the opposite of that right now. It's all heavy and strict, and it's not a good energy for us as human beings. And I think when you look at something like that, we as humans have always been a species that kind of wants to get away from pain and towards pleasure. So for our ancestors, they wanted to create the most efficient way to make the fire so they didn't have to rub the rocks together for 3 hours, and towards the easiest way to get the fire going so that they could be warm. We've always tried to get away from pain and towards pleasure. But regardless of that, we still spent the vast majority of our days in pain, physical and mental pain and discomfort. Now in the modern world, when we're looking at a political belief system, we're becoming so obsessed with constantly being in pleasure that the painful experience that takes place in our brain of thinking we could be wrong is too uncomfortable because we're not okay with pain anymore, that it's just easier to say, well, they're an idiot or they're wrong or they hate the world or they got all and just to live in our world of pure pleasure of us always being right. And with all kinds of situations politically, it's really important to understand that there's a chance that you're wrong. There's a chance that the facts you've been reading might be wrong on either side of the conversation. And it's not that one of you therefore needs to completely convince the other one to swap sides or whatever it might be, but there just needs to be this deep understanding of like, it's okay to be wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong about lots of the things that I think in my mind. And when I have these conversations with people about political stuff, my friends or whatever it might be, I just deeply understand they're consuming some content, I'm consuming some content, and it's just okay if you're wrong.
So can we, maybe this is a good way to bring this to a conclusion, can we, by exercising discipline, by exercising separation, by trying to value something moving slower rather than something moving faster. Does that change our brain chemistry? Does it ultimately rewire our brain, if that means anything, to the extent where we're not so dopamine addicted?
Unbelievably so. We can really change these 4 chemicals. We have dopamine,
Yeah, we
oxytocin.
talked about dopamine, oxytocin, there's serotonin and endorphins.
Serotonin and endorphins as well. And we can create very significant
And then
alterations
the same
in
thing,
them.
just quickly we move off that. Serotonin, people know that from ecstasy.
It's like a mood enhancing chemical. It's not 90% of it is built within our gut, within our digestive system, and it wants healthy food and nature and sunlight. It wants the more peaceful stuff. Serotonin is a very content experience where you're not like obsessed with more. Dopamine is you're obsessed with
So
more.
why don't we become slaves to serotonin?
If we became slaves to serotonin, it would solve the entire thing. Like if we became obsessed with serotonin as a species, we would all feel so much peace within our
So
systems.
why can't we do that?
Because dopamine is hijacking our capacity to know what we're actually in the pursuit of. Because right now, our greatest desires as a human every day are basically like success, money, and pleasure. That's become the dominant thing we pursue. Whereas originally for humans, they did have to do dopaminergic stuff. They had to go and find the food or the meat or the fruit. But that was so that they could then sit around the campfire in the evening and laugh and connect and be content. Yeah. Whereas now we're choosing dopamine land over what we call oxytocin oasis, where you're just with humans and you're bonding up. And if we go in the pursuit of oxytocin and serotonin, which is deep human connection and also natural environments, natural food, a massive reprioritization of your sleep and how much sleep you're actually getting, which obviously the dopamine in the phone is massively disrupting. In that state, your nervous system calms down, anxiety is way less impactful, like kids are way less anxious if they've got those 2 chemicals increased, as are adults. And if we try and reorientate what is the priority as a human, is it only success and pleasure, or is it actually the quality of your relationships and the time you spend in natural calm environments and the foods that you eat and the rest that you get? If that becomes glorified and celebrated, then society would change.
Could we have a serotonin Ozempic then? Serotonin.
The questions I get in this situation is so funny. Yes, I mean, you can take serotonin-based medications.
Should you?
SSRIs. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I always have to suggest that people always follow their own psychiatrist plan with medications. But yes, you can take those medications, but we also should pursue it naturally. You can't take oxytocin-based medications. Well, they're effectively opioids, and that's why you get so addicted. Opioids are effectively pilled love, which is crazy. You can imagine how addictive pilled love is. But if we just begin to like rethink about like what is it like on the weekends, for example, for all the people in Dose, we get them to do serotonin Saturdays and serotonin Sundays, where they try what we call big phone fasts, where they'll commit and they gradually work up to this, but 3 or 4 hours where they're completely off a phone and they're with their family or they're in nature or they're eating food or they're hanging out with their friends and they're just de-stimulating from this addictive world. But currently it's basically 90% of our time is dopamine, and it should be 25 25 25.
And endorphins, is that what you get when you exercise, for example?
Yeah, it's when you really physically push your system. Endorphins, interestingly, make us very resilient to stress, and our bodies, those like if you took the average athlete, they'd probably be pretty good at managing stress because they've put themselves through so much physical difficulty that they've become capable of dealing with that uncomfortable feeling of stress in the system. And when endorphins release, they de-stress us and they make us tolerant effectively. And as a very sedentary species in the modern world, our endorphins are lowering like crazy. And for example, when I think about the future of having kids, I'm like nearing those years of having kids and I'm thinking, how am I going to get them to manage like headsets or phones? I'm really thinking in my head that whilst I want them to be a part of all these things and be capable of thriving in the modern society and their social groups and so on, I want them to have to physically earn their experiences of quick dopamine sitting down and being sedentary. So I probably will pursue a path that could be considered very disciplined of like a certain amount of press-ups to be able to go on your iPad, or a certain amount of time spent outside, or a certain amount of social time spent.
But you
or
wouldn't ban
discipline
their
in your
phone.
home.
Because one question on this is, because I've spoken to people who say, ban all phones till you're 18. And you can see the merits of that from what you say, because then you'd have to. You know, when I was growing up, I grew up before the technological revolution. I had to read books because there was nothing else to do. And that was great. So I read a lot of books. So you could ban all phones.
Yeah.
Or you could try and create a society in which your kids, as they grow up, learn how to use their phones.
I think I probably will pursue the path of learning how to use them. I think it would be cool for our brain chemistry if they were banned. But I think, unfortunately, the way in which they're utilised socially and also from a work perspective, it's too integral that you become capable at using one. That if you suddenly learnt it at 18, it would just be
it's like an Amish person being thrown into
and we've
Street.
watched, like, when the smartphones first came out, watching my parents even try and get good at smartphones in comparison to us as kids, me and my siblings, it was, like, completely different. So I don't think the goal is ban them. I think teach them the capacity of earning your time spent on there. Even when you're on there, are you choosing long form content over short form content? Learning to actually have different things that you prioritize in your life and have some kind of direction of something you're chasing as a young person, rather than just only thinking the phone is your source of pleasure. I think there just needs to be frameworks invented as a society to manage it.
But the revolution needs to start soon.
I'm starting it.
You're starting the revolution. You're hearing it now on this show. The book's called The Dose Effect. TJ, what a pleasure to speak to you. I think, I'm not sure everyone will do this stuff, and I'm not sure society will do this stuff, but something's got to change, because otherwise...
All we got to do is start with not going on it as soon as we wake. We can't eat a donut as soon as we wake up in the morning, and that's metaphorically what it's doing to our brain. It's addicting us to the pleasure. If you just start to delay it and have a little bit of earned dopamine when you wake, shifts begin to arise. Great, man. That's it for this week's episode of The Things on Times Radio. Big thanks to TJ. I hope that's some food for thought to you. I'm sure you'll be commenting beneath the line. Do that, not in an addictive way. Don't get compulsive about it. Be chilled. Just relax. There's been about 40 minutes. We've had a long conversation. There's been some nuance there. You can hit follow, subscribe. Stay tuned for more big ideas and big thinkers. Long form. We're bringing back the long form. We're fighting the dopamine here on Times Radio. Thank you so much for joining us.